Ooh man, we got a fun one here today. I've got a mini-ITX case from NZXT that also includes a fully modular SFX Power Supply, 140mm AIO liquid cooler, and a PCIe riser that supports a full-size GPU. And it's vertical. It's not the size of the rig, it's the power behind it. So we're gonna see if this tiny tower goes hard or falls flat. You ready? Let's go! Yo, I'm Brian P. You're watching BadSeed Tech, and today we're taking a look at the H1 mini-ITX case from NZXT. It's got that NZXT aesthetic all over it. It's a small boy. It's just 15 inches tall and then like 7.3 by 7.3 inches. It's really not fair to just call it a case either. It's more like a Barebones because you're getting a fully modular 650 watt gold rated PSU, 140mm AIO CPU cooler, and a Gen 3 high-speed PCIe Riser Card included. So I think final pricing on this will be like $349.99 US. I know that's a big number, but you got to figure everything you're getting included for that dollar amount. The PSU is like 100 to 125 depending on the brand. 140mm AIO is like 85 to 100. Riser cards vary, but at least like 40 to 50 bucks. So that's almost like $250 worth of included components and accessories. But the best part is you don't have to source any of this stuff yourself, and you don't have to wonder if it's gonna fit or work in your build when it does show up. When I first saw the H1, I was apprehensive. It had the look of a puzzle box. I wasn't exactly sure how easy this was gonna be. I built in one mini-ITX case before. It was kind of a nightmare, so I wasn't real stoked to revisit this. For parts, I went with the Aorus X570i Pro Wi-Fi from Gigabyte. Solid little board, actually supports 2 NVMe drives, and only one real downside, which we'll get into in a bit. This is only going to house a Ryzen 2 2700X for now, but I wanted this X570 platform because I may have a plan for this little guy shortly. I also originally included to use Aorus RAM in here too because it's fast, it overclocks well, it looks good. For storage, I went with a Crucial 500 gig NVMe and a Samsung 500 gig SSD. Because the H1 handles most full-size GPUs, I went with the standard 1080 Ti for the blower style design because it's been my experience they do better in smaller enclosures. Building in this thing was way easier than I had anticipated. I'm talking if I hadn't been filming, it would have gone together in about 30 minutes, though it is necessary to consult the manual. Certain things like bracket config for the AIO, small stuff. The big stuff you need to know and little tips and tricks are printed inside the case on these little stickers that come off without too much fuss. The radiator and the fan assembly just pivots out in this little tray. It's awesome. So we set it for AMD and the cooler install was really straightforward. You'll notice this little pump top is branded. It's low profile, so it doesn't have any of the lighting effects you may have come to expect from the Kraken series. Because the radiator is going to cover the entire top of the motherboard assembly, I didn't assume we'd get much use out of the Aorus RAM visually, so I opted for some basic Corsair Vengeance. It turns out it's still no height issue to use taller RGB RAM, and you actually do get a little bit of flash through the front in the finished build, though not the full effect. The AIO doesn't require a USB 2, it just connects the fan via a PWM header and the pump tack off another header. A letdown here was that this motherboard doesn't have an internal USB-C header, so despite the case having one on the front IO, which is awesome, I wasn't able to use it. The way the riser's designed, you can also access the rear of the motherboard as well, as long as it's not plugged in. You also have 2 toolless spots for SSDs, and they install easy. So on this board, in this case, you can support 2 NVMEs and 2 SSDs simultaneously. So this rig can easily function as a workstation or editing rig. As you can see, there was ample room for the GPU as well. Thickness may have some limitations, but length won't be much of an issue at all. We also didn't need the second set of PCIe cables, so I just removed them. All the cabling is only as long as it needs to be with very minimal excess. The white C-shaped portion of the case is vented on both sides. Both are removable as well. The front panel is dark tempered glass and allows a look at the side of the GPU and a side view of the RAM, as well as any accent LEDs your motherboard may have. And the rear is simply this vented panel. The whole configuration is set up so the rear of a traditional build, like all your I/O, is actually on the bottom of this PC. This vertical config means it takes a much smaller footprint on your desktop and it looks really unique. The bottom panel for I/O is approximately 3 inches off the desktop, so you won't really be limited to what you can plug in there. I suppose you could technically run it face down on the glass in a more traditional config, which will leave your power plug sticking up just a bit. You can't run it glass out because you'll be choking your GPU. With an AIDA64 torture test running from cold for about 10 minutes, I saw the CPU hit temps between like 62 and 64 degrees with very minimal spikes. That's not including testing the GPU at the same time. After I cooked it for a while with just the CPU stress, no GPU, I got like just under 67 average, including idle, with spikes up to 80 and a pretty steady 70 degrees. When I stress tested the CPU and GPU simultaneously, after 10 minutes I got numbers that were spot on with the other tests. So CPU temps were unaffected by the introduction of the GPU at 100% load. That's a really brutal test, like worst case scenario, but there it is. More real world, gaming at 165 Hz, 1440p for about an hour. I got a CPU max of 59 degrees and a GPU average of 71 on the Founders Edition card with spikes all the way up to like 87. Given that, the GPU definitely didn't fare well in the torture test either. That Founders Edition card hit temps around 86 while sitting right at about 84 most of the time. That's not gonna work. So I slapped in the EVGA 1080 Ti SC with the dual fans. Much better. Saved us about 10 degrees under 100% workload. It was like 2 dB louder total, but the temperature savings are well worth the trade-off. It's worth noting here that CAM doesn't recognize any component on this system, so it's not necessary to use CAM at all if that's a stopping block for you. I'll say that again in case you missed it. You do not need to use CAM software at all to use this system. As for the overall experience here, I'm a big fan. Some of you may enjoy the challenge of building in an ITX case, not me. This was an absolute walk in the park. Having the radiator and fan pre-mounted, tubing was a preset length, the majority of the cabling was pre-routed and also in a preset length. This thing was super easy, so much so that if you need to go back in and quickly swap the GPU, the primary NVMe, the RAM, the SSDs, even the CPU, piece of cake. You could potentially put together an extremely powerful rig in this case with the right component selection. Looking at you, 3950X. Only downside is the overall volume level, mostly dictated by your GPU, because instead of being completely in a case or behind any kind of sound dampening, you basically have the fan sharing a very vented exterior wall. This is true of a lot of ITX builds, so that's the trade-off. Real world, we're talking about 8 or 9 dB increase from idle to fully maxed out. As for value, I know some of the specialized mini-ITX enclosures can get up there in cost. The Ghost S1 with the top hat will run you like $320 and includes, forgive me if I'm wrong here, but nothing. I know this isn't a solid aluminum chassis. Some parts are obviously plastic, but the build quality here feels very good, much more so than even the recent H510 Elite. NZXT seems to feel that way too, because both the case and the AIO both carry a 3-year warranty. That's an additional year over their standard case warranty. And the PSU carries a 10-year warranty. I like that. NZXT, especially of late, hasn't exactly been known for their value, but a case, PSU, riser card, and AIO, all custom fitted and basically pre-wired for $349, I call it a win. Especially when it builds out this quick, it's easy to go back and work in, it's got solid build quality, and when it's all together, it's got a look that doesn't scream, I'm a computer nerd, please don't have sex with me. I absolutely love this thing. As always, links for everything down in the description. Any questions, hit me in the comments or drop by the Discord. And that's it for this time. I'm Brian P. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button, hit that sub button, and until next time, stay up.